India's quiet withdrawal from the Aini Air Base in Tajikistan marks the end of an ambitious but complex chapter in its foreign policy. For years, the country had maintained this small but strategic outpost, which allowed it a rare foothold in Central Asia, a region where Russia and China dominate. The story of Aini began almost 25 years ago when India spotted an opportunity to strengthen its presence beyond its borders during a time of regional instability. After the 9/11 attacks, Afghanistan was in chaos, and India sought ways to counter the growing Taliban influence while also keeping an eye on Pakistan from a new vantage point. In 2002, New Delhi signed an agreement with Tajikistan and began investing heavily to rebuild the old Soviet-era air base near Tajikistan. The project cost around $100 million and turned a worn-down facility into a modern airfield with upgraded runways, fuel depots, and control systems. Indian engineers and Air Force personnel worked side by side with their Tajik counterparts, and the base soon became operational under Indian coordination. Although it never hosted a permanent fleet of Indian jets, Aini was used for joint operations, training, and humanitarian missions. At one point, a few Indian helicopters operated there to help with disaster relief efforts, reflecting India's focus on soft power rather than outright military dominance. About a decade ago, Indian fighter jets briefly deployed to Aini in what was seen as a milestone, the first time Indian combat aircraft had operated from a foreign base. The location of Aini made it incredibly important strategically. Tajikistan lies close to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and China, and the base sits only a few dozen kilometers from the narrow Wakhan corridor that links Afghanistan to China's Xinjiang province. From Aini, important Pakistani cities like Peshawar were technically within reach for Indian aircraft, which meant Islamabad could never ignore the presence of this base when planning its defenses. Moreover, Aini offered India an alternative route to Afghanistan that didn't depend on Pakistan's land access, a great advantage during times when relations between the two countries were tense. The base also played an essential humanitarian role, helping India evacuate its citizens from Afghanistan both in 2001 and again in 2021 when the Taliban regained control of Kabul. However, despite its usefulness, the Aini project was never fully secure. Tajikistan, though friendly toward India, remains heavily dependent on Russia for defense and on China for economic support. Both Moscow and Beijing saw India's growing military presence in the region as competition. Russia already runs its massive 201st military base in Tajikistan, the largest it has outside its borders, while China, over the past decade, has built its own covered facility in the country's southeast. Facing pressure from these two powerful allies, Tajikistan decided not to renew India's lease in 2021, citing a desire to limit non-regional forces. Tajikistan asked India to withdraw, which was completed quietly by the end of 2022. For 3 years, the move stayed under wraps until reports in October 2025 finally revealed that India had left completely, marking the closure of its first and only overseas base. The disclosure sparked debate in India. Some critics argued that the Aini base, though symbolic, offered little practical benefit and became an expensive investment with limited returns. Others mourned its loss, seeing it as a retreat in an area increasingly influenced by China and Russia. Yet, officials suggest that India's withdrawal does not signal a step back but rather a change in strategy. New Delhi is shifting toward what analysts call multi-alignment, building partnerships across Central Asia through trade, infrastructure, and technology instead of relying solely on military strength. With projects like the Chabhar port in Iran and the international North-South transport corridor, India aims to remain connected to Central Asia and sustain its influence through diplomacy, commerce, and culture. The end of the Aini chapter, in essence, reflects a broader shift in India's foreign policy, from hard power presence to smart power engagement.